Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Charles. It's January 25th, the morning of, and welcome all of you. Hey, this has been on my mind all yesterday afternoon. I got to tell you, I got to give a hat tip, first of all, to one of the subscribers. This fella here sent me a private message and got me onto this, and I've had a chance to look into it a little bit. I was thinking about how does NASA propagate the electromagnetic waves through a vacuum, of space? That they say space is nothing but a huge vacuum. So, and Chief Justice had sent me a video showing a industrial vacuum machine that they use to pick up these huge, heavy pipes. So anyway, that was on the back of my mind. So I started looking into that. Started looking into the vacuum of space, and I ran across some information, and I haven't been able to put it all together yet. There's a lot of questions I still have, but I wanted to put this out there for you, and maybe you can make a comment, and maybe we can put this all together. That's what I like, the mastermind concept. We don't have to do this in a vacuum, no pun intended, but there's a lot going on here that I think we can expose the lies that we've been told. And before I go any further, I want to make a correction, or at least mention it, that yesterday I mentioned that when I saw those two orbs in the park here, they must have been hundreds of miles away. But I got to thinking about that, and I'll show you why here in a moment. They couldn't have been hundreds of miles away. But it's hard to tell in space like that how far something is away. And it's like over the ocean. Something can be a long way away, but or close, but it's actually a lot further away than you think. You know, I've been out on the ocean before, or here on the big lake. The lake here, Flathead Lake, is the largest lake west of the Mississippi. And you can get on that lake, and we're going across the lake, and it doesn't seem like it's that far away, but it is. It's a lot further away than you imagine. In fact, one of the fellows I was with on his boat, kind of a big boat, he ran out of fuel one day when we were, one evening, when we were going across to the other side. Coming back, he ran out of gas because it was a lot further away than you think. So, I want to get that out of the way, and I also want to bring us back to this. And I mentioned this yesterday. Be sure that your sin will find you out. And NASA has told lies in the past, and there were certain machinery or equipment that we did not have, so they were able to get away with their lies. But now that we have this particular machinery, which I will show you here in a moment, their lies aren't holding up any longer. Okay, like I mentioned, I've been looking into the vacuum of space, and I had to hunt for this, but I found this. This is a talk show with Neil deGrasse on it, and he talks about the vacuum of space. So I'm just going to let him talk. And like I've said, it was Yogi Berra who said something like, you can learn a lot just by observing. So we're going to let Neil deGrasse Tyson talk, and then we will analyze what he says. And I don't have all the answers yet. This is a subject, a area that I don't know a lot about yet, but that doesn't mean we can't learn, and that's why I'm doing this video. Some of you maybe know more, and you can contribute in the comments below this video when we're done here. This is 3.5 minutes long. I've sped it up. I'm going to play the whole thing because I think it's important to hear the whole thing. So here we go.
If we take an open jar into space, to outer space, and close it once up, thereby filling it with the vacuum of space, what would happen if we bring it to Earth level atmosphere and even to the International Space Station?
It would be the best vacuum we would have ever encountered on Earth, ever.
Really?
Yes. We can't make vacuums as good as space vacuums.
Really?
Yeah. Last I checked, we can't do it.
Well,
somebody last week pulled one off.
We can't have it as much as space is just.
Space is a far better vacuum than anything we've been able to create in our laboratory.
So why don't we always bring back jars of vacuum? I now have a new business where I'm going to sell jars of the best vacuum you've ever seen.
But I like the way the question was worded. It's like that when the vacuum gets inside the jar, what happens is the air inside the jar escapes.
Yes.
By the way, once you put the vacuum in it,
yeah.
and then you bring it back to Earth, what will happen is the inner surface of the glass, and presumably a metal lid, will outgas into that volume. Their gas is dissolved on the surfaces of all solid objects, and it just stays there. It's molecules that are just stuck in the jaggedy surface of every solid object. If you now evacuate the center of that jar, it dislodges those gas molecules, and so it'll then put some kind of gas pressure back in. If you're ever trying to create a perfect vacuum, you first vacuum it out, then you heat the sides of the container. That releases the gas that's attached. Then you vacuum it out again.
So what would you bring into space to bring the vacuum back home?
Something that has a really, really smooth surface with hardly any gases attached to it.
More smooth than glass.
Oh yeah. So glass is way more smooth. You could preheat it before you did this, and
you bring like John Hamm to somebody who's super smooth. You'd be like, yeah. All right.
What else you got?
Here's a question. Hey Neil.
Oh, by the way, you might ask
if
quote unquote nature abhors a vacuum, which of course it doesn't, because most of the universe is vacuum. How come all Earth's atmosphere doesn't just rush out into the vacuum of space?
It's true.
Why doesn't it? Yeah, because Earth has gravity, and the gravity keeps the atmosphere separate from the rest of the vacuum of space. That's all.
Okay. All right, here's the question. I just discovered.
Did I just say that? No. So.
Oh wait.
No, a vacuum. I should have answered that completely differently.
Yeah.
So a vacuum on Earth, we think of nature abhorring it because air wants to get inside the vacuum.
Air wants to go to the vacuum.
Air wants to go because you're in a place where there's air pressure that wants to get inside. As you get higher up in the atmosphere, the air pressure gets less and less and less and less and less. Because there's less air above it pressing down. And when you get less and less and less and less and less, the air doesn't want to do anything. It's got no forces. There's no air pressure to make it. It's just going to float away. Okay, so our atmosphere goes out thousands of miles, getting ever so thinner as it gets out there. And so it's not that Earth is holding the atmosphere down, although it is. It's that the air pressure out there has no urge to go anywhere other than just staying right where it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
As I watched the video all over again, I had to come back here and insert this edit because I noticed something I didn't notice the first time. And Yogi Bear is so right. I've watched that thing now, that video that we just saw, 3 or 4 times. And I've gone back and repeated. And I added those edits that you see there in the big yellow boxes. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a liar. And he caught himself in his lie. And he said, wait a minute, I shouldn't have said that way. And then what he did from that point on is he brought out a red herring. And with all the experience I've had, and I haven't had that much, but I've had more than the average non-attorney, you have to learn how to look for these, what they call illogical fallacies. And he brought out a red herring. He changed the subject from the vacuum of space, which he said was the perfect vacuum, and that we haven't been able to create the same kind of vacuum on Earth that we have in space. He changed the topic from the vacuum of space to the air pressure in space. He said as the air gets higher and higher, it loses its pressure, it gets thinner and thinner, and then it just floats away, is what he said. Well, what we're talking about here is the vacuum of space. If space is a vacuum, it's going to want to suck everything up into space, right? And he said, no, well, gravity is, although gravity is holding the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth, it's that there's no air pressure. And so, but see, that doesn't make any sense, because we're talking about something being pulled away from the surface of the Earth, not air pressure coming back. He's got it reversed. And most people, and if you listen to the guy doing the interview, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't get it. It's going over his head. And 99% of the people out there, they really don't know what this guy is saying, because they think he's the scientist and he knows it all and he's got the PhD, so anything he says is true. And that's where we need to stop, and we need to analyze and say, wait a minute, I've heard what you said and it doesn't make any sense. And just because I don't have a PhD, and we used to call PhD, what was it? Post hole digger. You know, just because people have a PhD, that doesn't mean they know anything. I've met a lot of PhDs in my lifetime that can't change the oil in their vehicle, and couldn't hammer a nail, but they think they know everything because they got their PhD and they don't know squat. So Neil deGrasse Tyson brought up a red herring. He changed the topic from the vacuum of space to there's no air pressure. But we're not talking about pressure pushing down on the Earth's surface. We're talking about vacuum taking the atmosphere off of the surface of the Earth. And we caught Neil deGrasse Tyson in a lie. He's not telling the truth. Alrighty then, so we heard Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I think he's a liar, alright? It's just a matter of how do we prove it. And he's a pompous ass, and he's going to get caught in his lies here before long if he hasn't already. There's quite a few people looking into what he says. I think I've caught him a couple times on some of the other videos I've done, but he told us that the atmosphere gets thinner and thinner and thinner as we go up into what he calls space, and that the gravity of the Earth is holding the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth, so the vacuum of space doesn't pull the atmosphere away from the surface of the Earth. So what he's saying is, if I understand what he's saying, is the vacuum of space, and it's the perfect vacuum, he said. You can't get any better than the vacuum of space, is equal to the force of the gravity, or I should say that the other way around. The force of the assumed gravity is strong enough to keep the vacuum of space of pulling all of the air, all of the atmosphere off